Oh, you are in for a treat. Whether you're a parent or you're a grandparent or you're someone who wants to have kids some days, or you're like me and you don't necessarily want to have kids, but you have nieces and nephews and you just love kids, then you're going to love this episode because you're going to learn what every parent needs to hear about food control and their kids. If you want to raise kids who grow up to be intuitive eaters, and maybe you're scared about messing with your kids' relationship with food, there's a lot of fear, anxiety, uncertainty, then this is going to give you so much guidance. It's going to make you feel so much calmer. And so let's get into today's episode. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Hello, my loves, and you are going to love this episode. Truly, I just got off an interview with Nicole Cruz, who's a registered dietitian who really specializes in family nutrition and helping kids have a healthy relationship with food and their bodies. And we talked about so much, like mistakes to avoid and what to do if your kid is a picky eater and how to have conversation with your kids regarding nutrition and things that are going to make your life and their lives easier. And it's just, I learned so much. I'm not a mom, but if I was, I would have been applying everything and taking so many notes. And so whether you are a mom, an aunt, or just a curious girly like I am, you're going to learn so much. I learned so much. And I wanted to have this conversation. I wanted to have Nicole on the podcast because the truth is that if you were raised in a family that maybe had a lot of negotiating, or you have to finish your plate, or eat this so that you can have dessert, or you grew up in a family where there was a lot of dieting or body shame. Maybe you grew up with a family that had a healthy relationship with food, but then you struggled with your relationship with food and you are now working on more of an intuitive eating approach and healing your relationship with food, but you're not quite there yet. So you're not sure how to talk to your kids about it because it really has to be this embodied experience. Then I get why it would feel really stressful and confusing and overwhelming to even know how to have these conversations with your kids about food, about nutrition, without quote unquote screwing them up. So if you want your kids to grow up to be intuitive eaters, to have a positive body image, to know how to listen to their cues, this episode is for you. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about our guest. So Nicole Cruz is the founder of Nourish Together, a shame-free approach to family nutrition focused on instilling food and body trust. As a registered dietitian and mom of 3, she combines her personal and professional experience to help parents raise confident eaters who can enjoy a variety of foods, listen to their body cues, and avoid obsessing over sweets and other quote unquote treats. Now, that is right up my alley. And so grab a coffee or a tea, get your notes app or a journal, something to take some notes on because we cover so much. I asked so many questions. It felt a little self-indulgent, but I'm just so grateful that I have this podcast because I get to meet these truly incredible guests and then bring that value to you. So without further ado, let's learn about how to raise our kids to be confident, to enjoy food, to be peaceful, and to listen to their bodies. Okay, Nicole. So let's start with what our listeners can expect to see as a change and experience as like a positive impact in their lives if they take what you teach them today and apply it to their own lives, especially moms who listen to this podcast.
Oh, that's such a great way to start, right? To really think about like what actually happens, what are the results of taking this approach with food. So one of the first things that my clients always experience is immediate relief. They're always like, oh my gosh, everything feels so much lighter, so much more relaxed. I feel better about meals. They'll say meal times are more positive, they're happier, they actually look forward to it. I've had parents be like, oh my gosh, we have to do family meals, which I don't suggest everybody has to do family meals, but sometimes they're like, okay, I think that would be helpful, and they start looking forward to them and their kids are excited that they're having them and they just feel like food feels lighter and easier. I mean, that's really the initial thing. And then with time, we also often, if we're seeing some kind of I don't want to say behavioral issues, but some challenges around the way that our kids are eating, we'll see those patterns start to shift too. So, like if your child is really obsessive with sweets and that's like all they want to eat, and they seem like they're just like, trying to get sweets all the time, it seems like they don't have a stopping point. They would eat only sugar if you let them. They'll see them start to relax around sweets and maybe even say, like, no, I'm done. I don't want the rest of my cookie, that sort of thing. So, with time of taking a different approach, we often see their behaviors actually start to shift. But that can take a little bit of time of getting used to new patterns in the way we're approaching food.
Yeah, and I could definitely understand how I'm not a mom, but my sister is, and I have nieces and nephews, and as a mom, like you love your kids so much and you care for them and you want to see them thriving and growing and being able to be healthy and active. And so I can only imagine if you have someone who is a picky eater or you're constantly having to cook and plan meals as a mom. And so that relief to know that things are easier, that you know how to communicate with your kids. This is a question I get all the time from my clients is like, if you were never taught how to have a healthy relationship with food and you're just starting to learn with yourself, now you're also having to learn how to talk to your kids about food, your kids who don't really know much, who are so young, who are absorbing everything that you're saying. It can feel like you don't know what to do, like you're doing something wrong. And then if they're experiencing challenges with food, you probably feel as a mother a lot of guilt around it.
Yeah, a lot of parents feel like I'm doing something wrong. I'm not doing enough. I don't feel like I'm doing this right, or maybe I'm missing something here.
Hmm.
And what I see too with a lot of the parents that I work with, which are probably in this boat that you're talking about of like, oh, I'm learning about intuitive eating for myself, or I'm working on healing my own relationship with food. And so I don't want to screw my kid up. And so sometimes they're just like scared to do anything wrong. And so they don't want to do anything. They're kind of just like,
Yeah.
it's off. I don't want to do anything because I don't want to do it wrong or mess it up. And there
Hmm.
is a balance about still getting to be a parent, still getting to provide some structure and guidance, and not be controlling and not create quote unquote like issues around food.
Oh, yeah, that's so good. Like that dichotomy of how can I provide structure because kids do thrive on structure without it being super rigid and inflexible. So I would love to ask you, what are some of the common patterns or mistakes that you see being made in behaviors and language around food with your kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually it's kind of like one extreme or the other, or we bounce back and forth between them. So that could be what I was just saying around not doing anything. So food just becomes a total free for all. Like I don't want to do anything. So snack cupboards are always open. I'll make separate meals because you don't want to eat this. And it's just very like, yep, hands off. I'm just going to do whatever because I don't want to create issues around food.
Hmm.
Or the you need to take two bites and then you can be done, or if you want to have dessert then you need to eat your healthy foods first, or you need to eat your protein. Or a lot of parents are more on they're more understanding of not wanting to have such dichotomous language around like good, bad, healthy, unhealthy, but they still use terms like you're growing foods, or right, categorizing foods. And so I always say like in arbitrary categories, like what does it truly mean to have a growing food or something, right? Or
Yeah, and at what point do you go from being a growing food to being another type of food?
Yes, exactly. It really is hard to make sense of that. Is that kids need concrete terms like this is a fruit, this is a
Yes.
vegetable, this is right. They just need to know like what's concrete. This is a grain, or just call food what it is. It's a granola bar or it's a cookie. We don't have to label it as some other sort of term. So that's one thing with language too, right? Labeling food in these arbitrary categories or ways. But so they could be maybe in the like negotiating around food, pressuring to take bites, that sort of thing. And oftentimes it swings a little bit one way or the other because they feel like, well, that's not really working. My kid isn't eating, or now we're battling at the table, or it just doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm being too controlling, or they're over here not doing anything and then they feel like, but it doesn't seem okay to just let my kid eat like crackers all day. I don't feel good about that either. So then maybe they start saying like, well, if you want to have more crackers, you need to eat your vegetables. So that's why I say like they could be one extreme or the other, or they bounce back and forth because it feels like this isn't working though, or it doesn't
Yeah.
feel responsible. I have a lot of parents feel like I don't feel like I'm being responsible by just letting them eat the crackers or the bread and nothing else.
Yeah. And it must be really hard too, because I think everyone knows that like those growing years are so important. And is there anything to know too around like how important it is, maybe around like your kids' preferences around food? Like, is there any science or data around the way that we're fed early on and how it affects us later on in life?
Yes. Do you mean behaviorally or like nutritionally
I would say
speaking?
both.
Yeah. I mean, definitely behaviorally, like what we see in terms of the research is that kids that have a structured environment around food without coercion have a healthier relationship with food. And we see that in terms of, they'll say, the research shows like they're better able to listen to their body cues and self regulate. They eat a wider variety of foods. They actually have better body image and feel better about their body. So they're less likely to restrict their intake or binge eat or weight cycle. So we see that those
Mhm.
behaviors of creating this balance does tend to lead to what I would call like more desirable behaviors later on with food.
Mhm.
And nutritionally speaking, I think it's the same thing though about, getting our kids to be able to listen to their body cues so that they do eat an amount that is right for their body and allows them to grow into the body that's right for them. And again, supporting them with that structure does tend to help them eat a wider variety of foods, which also sets them up to be able to eat a wider variety of foods as they get older. Whereas if we are engaging in coercion around foods, a lot of times kids tend to rebel and then they don't even want to eat those foods later on.
Okay. Okay, so you mentioned structure without coercion, because you did say like negotiating dichotomous language around food. Those are some things that we do want to avoid. So what does structure without coercion even look like specifically?
Yeah. And for every family, it's a little different. Like I teach inside, like I have a program called Nourish Together, and I teach different ways to create that structure that works for your family. So it doesn't have to be this rigid idea of like, oh, I have to have a structured snack every single day. And like we have to sit down at 3 p.m. and, have a snack. But we do want to create some guidelines and boundaries around food. And so some of the areas that we do that in are what food is available at different times, right? So, like, if this is a family meal that I'm making, you aren't going to the cupboard and just grabbing your favorite animal crackers or granola bars or Cheez Its or whatever. This is the meal and this is what we're having for dinner. So we're creating some structure around what's available at that time. Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't have afternoon snacks, maybe where you do let your kids go to a certain snack bin or something. And that's how you create the structure. You're like, these are the snacks that are available in the afternoon, and this is what you can choose from. So there's
Hmm.
different ways to do that, right? I also do what I'll say, like, that you could create a different thing each day for yourself. Sorry, I'm like stumbling on my words here. So that I also say you can do that in a more structured way as well. Whereas maybe you don't want them to go to the snack bins every day because then they do always just pick out their same chips and that's what they're eating every day. So maybe you create what the snack is, but you're going to some days put out their favorite chips. And then you're also going to put out fruit with it and yogurt. And you're just creating like, this is what snack is today. So there's
Hmm.
some different ways that we can go about that. But one of the things is like what's available. And we figure out how we do that works for our family. Another is what we call having more of a daily rhythm around food. So, times when food is available or it's not available. And this can feel tricky because we do want to honor our children's hunger and ability to be able to listen to their body cues. At the same time, if our kids can graze on their favorite snacks all afternoon, when they get to dinner, they're not going to be hungry and they're not going to be encouraged to eat the meal that we make. So, we do want to think about, yeah, we're not just snacking all the way up until dinner. There might be a time where snacks are available and we say, okay, we're done with snacks right now. We're getting closer to dinner. Let's wrap this up. We put snacks away. If your kid is melting down right before a meal because they're starving, then you might need to give them a little something to make sure that they're okay and they're ready to go into the meal, right? So that's why it's not this like dictatorship where I'm just saying, this is when you are allowed to eat and this is when you're not. But we do want to think about how we're creating, again, that structure with timing and with a daily rhythm around food so that they're ready and encouraged to eat when the next meal or snack comes.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is that a lot of this is similar to intuitive eating as an adult. Like I have a pretty consistent rhythm around food, around what time I'll eat breakfast and lunch and my snacks. And if there's a day like today, I typically have my midday snack at like 2:30, but I was really hungry by 1 p.m. So today I was like, okay, I'm going to eat my snack earlier. But having that daily rhythm, like kids specifically thrive off of having those patterns and those routines. And like you said, we do want to honor if I always think about my niece and nephew. So my sister, like they are the most intuitive eaters I've ever seen. And that started right when they were born. And it is that of like, okay, they know when they get back from school that they have choice. So you mentioned, I highlighted that they have choice. So my sister will go, all right, do you want crackers and cheese? Do you want an apple? Do you want cucumbers? Do you want tomatoes? It's very rare that she's going to be like, do you want a bowl of ice cream? Because that's not going to feel great for their bodies before dinner. By giving them those choices, it looks at that core basis of intuitive eating, which is helping them have that body autonomy to feel like I am making this choice for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's different ways, right? Like we could just offer choices. Do you want the cheese and crackers or do you feel more like yogurt and granola today, right? We can do it in that way, or we can put out a variety of foods, but we're making sure that we're putting some different food groups out. So it's not like, here's your snack today, it's only apples, or here's your snack today, it's only this thing. We're giving them a variety. So if they're not super hungry, then maybe they do only choose the fruit. But if they're starving, then maybe they're able to eat the cheese, the crackers, and the fruit or whatever. So we're not dictating what they need to eat, but we are giving that variety and giving them some choice. And if they don't feel like crackers that day, then they still have cheese and fruit available or whatever it is. So they can still listen to their body within some structure and guidance.
Yeah. So before, when you were talking about, let's say, having boundaries around what foods are going to be available. So let's say it's dinner and you've made spaghetti and that's like, okay, this is the food we're having here. And I'm thinking through the lens of a mom who might be thinking, well, what if my kid doesn't like what we're having for dinner? I'm sure that you see that often.
Absolutely. So we need to be thoughtful, right? So where some of this work comes from is from Ellen Satter, who talks about the division of responsibility. She is a registered dietitian and licensed clinical social worker, and she kind of delineated who's responsible for what in the feeding relationship. So parents are responsible for the what, when, and where of food. Kids get to decide if and how much they want to eat, right? So she kind of...
Okay, wait, I want to repeat that slowly so everyone can really understand that. So parents are responsible for the what, the when, and the where. And then kids are responsible for what exactly?
If and how much to eat from what's provided.
Okay,
right?
Perfect.
Now, I always say like everything that I teach comes from that general philosophy, but we also really want to be responsive to our kids. We want to be flexible with it. And that's why I say it's not just this like, I'm deciding snack time is at 2 p.m. and that's it, right? Now you're cut off until dinner time or something. Like we do it, the application of it and seeing it through a more flexible lens is what can be challenging when it comes to real life, right? And implementing it. So I say that though, because one of the things she said that I really like is we want to be considerate, but not catering. So when we go to prepare that meal, we really want to think about, is there something here that I know my child does like and it's going to be filling and satisfying enough? So if I'm making spaghetti for dinner and I'm putting red sauce on it and meatballs, and then I'm just serving a side of broccoli, and I know my kid doesn't like broccoli and I know that they don't like spaghetti, then that is not a considerate meal.
Mm.
Right. But if I'm doing that and I know that they like plain pasta with butter, then I could leave some pasta aside. And if they choose to have plain pasta with butter, they could have that, but they're still having the same meal. Or I could also serve sourdough bread with butter if they like that. Or
Mm.
maybe I put out another side, to go with the meal that I know they like because they don't like any of those things. So
Mhm.
we're not creating a meal that we know that they don't like or haven't ever had before and then saying, too bad, this is what we're having for dinner. We are being thoughtful about making it work for them. But if they're like, I don't want pasta tonight, but you know they like spaghetti. They eat it regularly. Now they're like, but I don't want that tonight. I just want to have ice cream or I just want my crackers. You could say, I totally get it. I know this is what we're having for dinner. Do you want me to help you with just some plain pasta tonight? Or would you like to have just the bread? Like you can still work with them within that, but we're not just saying,
Mm.
go get whatever you want, or fine, I'll make you a separate meal, or I know they won't eat this, so I'll just get X, Y, and Z out. Right. And
Mhm.
now we're catering, which can often affect kids where they get a more and more limited variety. And it makes parents' lives way more stressful because they're just like pulling out, well, what do you want now? Well, what do you want now? Now we're negotiating. We're trying to figure it out. And oftentimes what I see, well, two things will happen. One is then they just rely on the same foods again and again. And so parents are concerned about their nutrition or that they're going down like a rabbit hole of only wanting to eat very specific foods. So that can often happen. Or parents just feel so frustrated and stressed out because they're just like, I don't know what to make anymore. And then they say that they want the grilled cheese and I made them the grilled cheese and now they don't want to eat it. And so now they're even more frustrated that they like made the separate meal and now the kid doesn't want to eat it. So when we end up negotiating a lot, sometimes the kid doesn't even end up eating the thing we made and now we're even more frustrated, and or
Mhm.
it can really limit their variety.
Yeah, I love that idea of offering options but within what you already made. Because chances are I would assume if I was the kid and I know that I like spaghetti and my mom was like, or you'd have plain spaghetti, I would be like, fine, I'm just gonna have the spaghetti with the sauce and it sounds a lot better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times kids do that, right? We have to remember the bigger picture of kids looking for ways to find control. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's them just coming to the table and maybe they're having a hard day and they don't want that thing. And so they're just like, no, I don't want. And that's their way of like exerting control. And when we can step out of that power struggle though and go, hey, that's okay. I get it. But this is the boundary. This is what we're having. How can I help you with that? They might be like, well, then I'm not going to eat. Okay, well, we're having dinner. Why don't you just come sit at the table with us? Like we're just removing ourselves. Oftentimes they end up eating. Like they might sit
Mm-hmm.
there for a few minutes and be like, whatever. And then they are like, okay, I'll have some pasta now. Or everybody else is enjoying the meal and they do. So we're still giving them again that structure and guidance around it, but without engaging in the coercion and the pressure and the force
Mm-hmm.
and the battling.
Yeah, because what would be the danger of, let's say that your kid is like, no, I don't want spaghetti. I want crackers and ice cream. What's the danger of negotiating and saying, okay, well, have a few bites of spaghetti and then you can have the crackers and ice cream? Like, what could that snowball into over time?
Yeah, for sure. We were just talking about this in our group call this morning, actually, around like, okay, well, I don't know. Should I give him the popsicle more? Or should I say you have to eat some more of your dinner before you can have it if he's always wanting popsicles, right? So I think this is a very common concern that comes up. And a lot of parents engage in it because it feels like, yeah, let's get them to eat a little bit of something. So, if that's going to help them get there by promising this other food, then they're still willing to eat it. But what often ends up happening can be a couple of things. One, it can start to put foods on like different playing fields so that the ice cream or whatever their preferred foods are get put on a pedestal. So it feels like I have to earn the ice cream or I'm not allowed to eat the ice cream without eating some other type of food, which in the short term can make it just sought out more often and then like begging for it and wanting it more and all of that, and it can become problematic in that way. But long term it can interfere with their relationship with food too, where they feel like they need to earn their food in some way, or they're not being good if they just choose to have some ice cream. They're being bad because they should have had some healthier food with it, right? We're like planting
Hmm.
seeds for how they're thinking about food as well. It also can create where they're not listening to their body because they're like, okay, well, I have to eat some of this food to get this food. So they're disconnecting and they're just kind of people pleasing to do what they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, but they're not saying, what am I really hungry for? What sounds good? How full am I? Or I'm not very hungry. I just wanted a few bites of ice cream, but now I have to eat the crackers and the cheese, or I have to eat half the plate of pasta to get the ice cream. And now I'm full, but what I really wanted was the ice cream. So I'm going to eat it anyways. So they become disconnected from their body. Or if it becomes like finish your dinner, then a lot of people will grow up feeling like I feel bad leaving anything on my plate. And so they feel
Yeah.
like they have to finish their plate because they were always made to do that as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of dynamic can affect them in a few different ways.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I'm thinking of, let's say that you have a kid who maybe you've been negotiating or allowing them to have like the different meals. And then I'm sure that you've seen this before where you end up at a point where your kid only eats like 10 foods and like will have a freak out if they're going to a dinner where you can't have the pizza because it's chicken that's getting served, and then they just won't touch their food because they don't want to eat anything. And now you're like backed into a corner because it's either you give your kid those foods or they have a freak out and they don't eat. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very common. And I'll have parents that get down such rabbit holes where their kids won't even eat the pizza or whatever. And they're like, I wish they would just eat pizza. So when we go to the birthday party, they would just eat the pizza, but they won't
Yeah.
even eat that anymore. It's like specific chicken nuggets or just the macaroni and cheese, or they'll only eat, their crackers and whatever. And so it can come out in all sorts of different types of foods depending on your child. But yeah, that's why we don't want to go down that, oh, they won't eat this. So I'll just give them this instead, because we're also telling our kid, like, you won't like this, right? We're like sending that message to them. You won't like this. You don't like this. You won't eat this food. So I'll make you something separate, or you can just have this. So what we want to do is we want to create safety at the table by making sure there's something there that we know that they like. We want to continue to expose them to these other foods so that they're seeing, like, oh, you're putting pasta out for me too. Maybe I do want to try it at some point. And then we're also finding ways often to make foods seem more curious or more fun, or get them involved in the kitchen so they want to touch it or be around it or that sort of thing. I have lots of tools and ways that I teach parents how to do that, that can come from how they're actually serving food at the table to make it seem a bit more exciting or appealing or empowering. Sometimes actually not putting any food on our kids' plate, just putting it out on the table and letting them serve themselves feels empowering, versus if you put it on their plate, they're like, well, I don't want to eat that. But you put it out for them and then they're like, oh, maybe I want to try that. I'm not sure. And so they might take it. But so part of it is like the way we serve food, it's having that exposure. And then sometimes we do have to create more comfort so that they start to feel safer and more comfortable with different foods. But one of the best things that we can do is to actually start serving and exposing them and creating meals that feel like this food is for everybody, not here's your chicken nuggets and I'm going to make myself pad thai or spaghetti or whatever over here. Even if you're still putting chicken nuggets on the table, you're making it feel like, oh, this is a meal for everybody. So we have the choices tonight are chicken nuggets, spaghetti, this and that. And then we bridge from there. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like a starting point, though. Like if you're down that rabbit hole, if they won't eat anything, a starting point is to just start creating a meal that feels like it's for everybody, even
Mm-hmm.
if it still has their safe food. And if they have a handful of safe foods, to get out of the rut of every night it's chicken nuggets. So maybe they do like plain pasta. So some nights you're going to serve plain pasta, some chicken nuggets alongside other foods. So we're mixing it up. So it's not like every night I have to have just my chicken nuggets. We want to help them learn to slowly become a bit more flexible as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's so good. And I'm assuming I'm really trying to put myself, because I do have a very picky nephew, and I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of that fear of, like, let's say I do serve the chicken nuggets with a side of veggies that I hope that he starts to eat. And then there's probably the chance that they're just going to eat their safe foods and leave the foods on the side. Like, if that happens consistently, and does that tend to happen? Like, what do you do?
That does tend to happen. Um, It depends on the child. So if there has been like a lot of pressure and stuff, it's interesting. Sometimes just removing that
Mm.
within a very short period of time, kids just become more curious. Like, oh, you're not making me eat that thing? Sometimes initially we swing the other way. So they're like, oh, well, then I'm not going to eat it ever again. Right. So they're just like not eating it at all. And they're only eating their safe food. But then they start to become more curious about it. If a child is actually more selective, maybe because of like sensory reasons or something, then they might continue to gravitate towards that safe food again and again and really not want to branch out. And that's where we might need additional tools, like just like I said before, helping them get involved in the kitchen. So maybe they're willing to at least touch some different foods. Maybe we
Hmm.
do something like taste tests to see if they even want to smell it. Maybe they're not even tasting it yet, but they're willing to smell it. So we can do more intentional things that help them get closer to the food, create a little bit more comfort and safety. But
Hmm.
still, the general premise is there. We don't pressure them. We keep exposing them to the same foods. And then we might have to use some additional tools. But I really find that if we give it enough time, a lot of kids start to at least become a bit more curious or in different scenarios. Like I have a client who their child was actually showing up to the table so anxious, like, and would run away from the table when she would see different foods on the table, like, no, 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 don't make me eat that, or I don't want that tonight, or whatever. And she would really get very like uncomfortable and anxious. And again, within like a week or so, things just started to calm down and she was acting more relaxed at the table. But then after even a few weeks, they were shocked that she started naturally taking a bit of chicken for herself, which she never would have touched. They went to Costco and she was eating the samples and they were like, what is going on? Right. So even though their whole meals haven't transformed and she's not eating everything under the sun, they start seeing these little shifts with different exposure and different scenarios once some of the like nervous system is even calmed down and they're not
Yeah.
reacting. Like I would say, our kids are reacting so much to that pressure, that restriction, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think that what I'm really hearing is if you're experiencing that where there's a lot of anxiety or like you said, those reactions at the table, zooming out and asking yourself like is what is the experience of food for my kids? Is it an experience that triggers a sense of danger and anxiety, and is that the association that they've created? And like how can, because when you're so young you form all these associations. So if you associate crying and tears and anxiety with food, then mealtime is going to be a battlefield. And you mentioned what I'm really hearing is like, how can we bring more fun? Like, how can we see food as something that is enjoyed, that's fun, that's playful? Even like, I don't know if this is something you recommend, but would like bringing them to the grocery store and teaching them about different foods and getting them involved, would that be helpful?
Yeah, every little way that we can do that. So letting them pick something out at the store, even if they don't try it, right? Even taking them, maybe your child is really doesn't like to try new foods. Maybe they don't like any fruits. And you're like, well, let's pick out a new fruit for the family to try this week, right? So you're still not like, oh, if you pick it out, you need to try it then, or you need to eat it, but you're just getting them to explore it a bit more. What does it feel like? What is the texture like? What does it smell like? Just getting them closer to that food to explore is a really great idea. We could do things, and it depends on where you live and what's around, but go apple picking in the fall or take them to pick strawberries or that sort of thing. See a farm, see how things are made. We can talk about that in terms of even processing, like, oh, how is this food made? How does the yogurt become yogurt? Oh, it starts as milk, right? Isn't that so interesting? Like, just talking about it, reading books on how food is made, which we have to be careful about because sometimes it's healthy, unhealthy, all of that.
Yeah.
But there are some good resources out there that can just teach on a very like objective basic level that can get them curious, get them having fun. You can do things where even if they're not trying it, again, this is exactly what you're talking about, is just creating more joy, creating more fun. So even if they're not eating it, could they come up with the menu for a night? Could they
Yeah.
serve you your food where it doesn't feel like pressure for them to have to eat it, but maybe they're putting it on the plate for you and then they're bringing it to you? Because some kids that get like this, like you said, they're so anxious or they don't want to be around the smell of something or they're so nervous they're going to have to eat it. But if we can take all of that pressure and stress off, then it starts to feel better for them and they're more open to it. So I always say if you have a child that is in this category, right? We have kids in different categories. Like I said before, some are obsessive with sweets. Some parents feel like their kid would just keep eating and doesn't have an off switch
Mm-hmm.
with food. That usually comes from feeling a bit restricted with food. So if maybe they've been limiting portions or telling them they shouldn't eat too many carbs or whatever, that can create a sense of urgency to need to eat more food. But if we're talking about a child who is more selective, I mean, this is true of all kids, but especially a child who's more selective or picky with food, the number one thing that you can do is create safety and comfort at the table. That's it. Like, that's it. Take
Mm.
all the pressure away, make it more joyful, make it a better experience for them. Yes, sometimes we need more tools and strategies, and we can build on that. But the number one thing you can do right away is to create that safety environment.
Oh, that's so good. And it's really like taking a holistic approach instead of just focusing on the food, but focusing on the whole experience of eating. And if I was a parent, I would need the reminder that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be like you celebrate these small wins of, okay, well, they didn't have a fit this time. They didn't eat, but they didn't cry. So, like, we're making progress. And just like anything behavior wise, it's going to be something that's going to be progressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's huge. I always am saying, like, they'll be like, it's such a small win. I'm like, no, celebrate that win that they
Hmm.
didn't run away from the table when you put that food there that they used to like freak out about. Or that maybe, and this happens often, is they'll start to put something on their plate, but they won't eat it. But they're showing like, oh, it can be near me. Maybe I was even considering eating it,
Hmm.
like that sort of thing. If they help you in the kitchen, that's great, right? So these little wins, yeah, exactly. It's so important to celebrate because we often think that it's going to go from where we're at to they need to just be eating a variety of foods. And that doesn't
Hmm.
happen overnight. So we want to look for those little baby steps and see them just seemingly more relaxed around food. And what I often see is that after a few months, actually, and sometimes much sooner, just depends on the dynamics in your child, they start to build momentum. And then it's
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, they did just go to Costco and try the samples. Oh, and then we made that food at home and they ate it. And yeah. And then the next night, maybe they are just eating their safe food. Okay, that's normal though. And then the next night, something different happens, or they go to a party and they're like, oh my gosh, they did eat a piece of pizza that they've never had before. So they'll see it start to be trying some new things, even if it's not always consistent, but they're kind of more interested. They're trying it. And then they see the overall variety start to expand a bit more.
And let this be a reminder for all of you listeners who are adults working on your relationship with food that the same goes as an adult is every win, every movement in the right direction is something to celebrate, is a sign that you're making progress. So just like with your kids, you want to celebrate those little things, you want to celebrate that with yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we talked about recently too. One of the moms who was concerned that her kid is like an overeater, only wants to eat like quote unquote junk food. Grandma took him to McDonald's and he only ate half a burger and a couple fries and was like, I'm done. She's like, that's never happened because that was always a food where if he got it, he would just try to like keep eating and eating. And I'd never seen him not finish a whole meal, which and I'm very clear on always is okay for them to
Yeah.
finish a whole meal. And it's not about them just eating less. But when you see a change in the behavior where it doesn't feel like it's compulsive, I'm trying to get more, it's like, oh, that's different. Maybe they are starting to listen to their body more. They are starting to notice if they actually enjoy that food. They're not just
Hmm.
reacting to it. And then the next time, if they go and they eat the whole burger, great. They went and ate the whole burger. Maybe they were more hungry and that's what they wanted. But we see these little things that are glimpses of, oh, they're starting to listen to their body. They're starting to relax around food, etc.
So good. Now, I would have a question around, especially if you're someone who has labeled food as good and bad, who has struggled with your own relationship with sweets and sugars and these quote unquote hyper palatable foods. And there's just so much fear mongering around that. And so, how do you navigate that if you're seeing your kids, having the I don't know what even it is, the chips or the Oreos, and like part of you is like, okay, I know that I want to allow them and give them that freedom, and then there's a part of you that's like in so much fear of what if this is going to affect their health, and like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think part of it is um, not projecting our own relationship with food onto our kids, which can be really challenging. So, one is to kind of check in with yourself and be able to remind yourself, like, my child is not me. They have their own relationship with food. And because they're enjoying chips or cookies or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that they're out of control with them or that they don't have a stopping point with them or that some days they just want more and other days
Mhm.
they don't. Like, so just really checking in with like, this could be my own stuff. And I don't actually want to put that on my child or feel like I need to control them in the same way that I've probably felt like I've needed to control myself, right? That's what so
Mhm.
many of us have done, especially from diet culture, is like, oh, you just need more willpower. You just need to stop eating them. You just need that. So that we don't want to put that onto our children and recognize they have their own relationship with food. They're learning to navigate food as well. The second is checking in with like, could they be actually reacting to something that feels like restriction for them? So sometimes I have parents say, well, they are allowed to have chips. We do have them, or we do have cookies. And when I check in more, it's like, well, yeah, kind of, but it's always one cookie. They're never really allowed to have more.
Mm.
Or we only have chips for special occasions, or I only buy the quote unquote healthy chips, but then they see all their friends eating Doritos and then they go to the party and they just want Doritos. So does it seem like food maybe isn't neutral or there has been some sort of like limit or restriction that they potentially are reacting to? And that's often what happens with these quote unquote bad or junk foods is that we
Mm.
feel like we need to control those more. And then we create like this reactivity cycle around it. And then we see them engaged in those foods even more and wanting them more. So then we feel like they really are out of control. I do need to pull back more, or we make comments about what they're eating, and it just perpetuates the thing. Because then the kid is starting to feel like I'm really not supposed to have too many of those. And it also could be we do let them sit down and eat the bag of chips, but we're making comments like we really shouldn't be eating too many chips, or you should be picking something healthier to go with it. And so we're creating again this dichotomy, even though they have access, it still doesn't feel free, or it still feels like they're doing something bad or wrong. That mental scarcity or anticipation that it's going to go away or I shouldn't be having them. So we have to check in with a few of those different things. We also do, really want to look at the access to food. Are we giving them those foods that they really do enjoy? And are we giving them times when they can have as much as they want? That doesn't mean that you have to buy chips and then just say, eat them whenever you want and however many you want. But are we giving times when it's not like, oh no, you can just have this one little bowl of chips? We're actually saying, like, yeah, let's put out chips. Oh, you want some more? Sure, let's have some more. Or we're putting out cookies and we're allowing them to eat the amount they want. So it doesn't feel like it's always just one cookie.
Right.
And then, right. So like it's okay to sometimes have a dinner and say, yeah, you know what? Everybody can have a cookie tonight and we're saving the rest for later this week. But we don't want it to feel like cookies are always the limited food. But it's
Yeah.
fine if you eat 20 apples, but you can only have one cookie always. So we do have to look at the access. We have to look at the language. We have to look at any kind of cycles that we've gotten into.
So good. Okay, the last question I'll have for you is if you're trying to teach your kids how to tap into their inner wisdom and really how to guide their choices from a place of a healthy relationship with food, I'm a huge fan of asking questions. Like, I am the queen of questions. And so what are some good questions that you can ask your kids? Because I feel like just telling your kids things is probably not the best approach. And so what are
Mm-hmm.
some questions that you can ask your kids to help them just self reflect and look inwards so that they can come up with answers on their own?
For sure. So, first of all, if maybe food has been restricted, if you've been pressuring it all, like any of the coercion, like we were talking about, just kind of like over controlling in a way, right? Like crossing that boundary and getting into too much control. The first thing I would recommend is saying zero. because even questions and asking them about it is going to feel like some sort of pressure. Like, I know you're asking me that because you want me to eat this way, or because you think I'm eating too much, or because of whatever. So the first thing my clients say, like, I know I'm just supposed to zip it, right? Just zip it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the first step, is like, you actually just want to remove all of that and not even really engage in conversations around too much food. And not to say that you can't talk about food or create joy with it, but we don't want it to feel like any sense of pressure. And a child who's been forced to, let's say, eat green beans, and then you're at the table and you're like, would you like to have some? They're still going to have a reaction to that. Like, no, you want me? No, no, don't. So I'm like, you put
Mm-hmm.
them on the table, you say nothing about them, zero about them, right? If they eat them, they eat them. If they don't, they don't. And you don't say a single thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is, like, we don't necessarily want to engage in too much talk around food, especially if there's been some dynamics that aren't helpful. With that said, over time, or if that hasn't really been the case, that they're going to feel some pressure around it, then it is good to say little things like, "Yeah, of course you can have more. How does your tummy feel? You feel good
Mm-hmm.
about that?" Right? Like, you can just kind of guide them to checking in, reminding them, like, "Okay, if you're feeling too full, we can always have more later." So again, you're just telling them to kind of listen to their body. I say that though, with, again, not wanting to overdo that and our kids to feel like it's a lecture, or
Right.
to feel like they have to answer in a way to get the food. Like,
Mm-hmm.
"No, I'm still hungry. I'm still hungry." Just so that they
Yeah.
feel like they're appeasing you to get the food. So you're just very like, of course you can. Like,
Mm-hmm.
nonchalant, you have full permission. Just listen to how you feel. Okay. And like, walk away. Like, just be done with it. Like, of course, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we can guide them in that way to kind of check in with their body. As our kids get a little bit older too, and they're starting to make some of their own choices around food or have more independence. Like, I have a 12-year-old now. And so I will say things like, yeah, how do you feel like your variety's been lately? Do you want me to like help you get out any fruits? Or, do you want to have, I don't know, I might pick a food that has some protein. Do you want me to help you make like an egg sandwich or an egg on toast? Like, because sometimes he'll go to school and he'll just eat a cookie and then some chips for lunch or something, because that's what he picked from the thing. And he doesn't want me to pack him a lunch. He doesn't, right? And so I could check in a little bit with like, yeah, do you feel like you've been getting a variety of foods? Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything you want? And then sometimes he'll be like, oh, will you make me like my favorite banana smoothie? I'm like, sure, I'll do that. Right. So we can check in gently, but again, we don't want it to be a feeling like, oh my gosh, I always have to have a fruit at every meal, or I need to have, right? So we don't want to have any rules around the way that we're talking about that,
Mm-hmm.
but we could talk to them about that sort of thing. But we do just want to mostly guide them back to their own body. And the truth is, kids are really good with that. So if we don't interfere too much, we don't even have to do too much to help them, as long as we're not
Yeah.
interfering.
Yeah. And I feel like also just reminding yourself that, let's say there's one meal where your kid does have cookies and chips. Like, the one meal, the one day of eating is not going to ruin your kid's relationship with food. So, like, zooming out and what you were talking about before in like asking the questions, what I think is probably really important is like, if your nervous system is dysregulated and in fear when you're around your kids, they're going to feel that. And so, really tuning inwards and making sure that you're coming from a place of detachment, you're feeling calm so that your kids can co regulate and feel that too.
Absolutely. We were, again, well, two things I'll say about that. So one is, I remember this one client who went through one of my programs of just specifically on sweets. And when she finished and she was noticing her daughter better regulate, she said the two things were true that she feel like made the biggest difference. One, I relaxed more about sweets. Like, I became more relaxed around sugar and sweets, and not making it like, not having this fear and anxiety about them eating too much. So I relaxed. And she said, and I created more structure with food. So there just wasn't so much negotiate. No, you've already had too many cookies. No, it's more of this. No, it's just like, no, we have some more structure around it with this is what's available. Of course we can have cookies right now. Oh, we'll have more cookies tomorrow. Right now, this is what we're having for dinner. Right. So
Mhm.
having more structure instead of the negotiations and stuff, and then relaxing. And on our group call this morning, one of the moms who's very concerned about her daughter and sweets, and her daughter's has been sneaking a lot of sweets. She said she went in the room and was looking for something and found 2 boxes of Girl Scout cookies like eaten in there. And at first she said, I kind of like said something like, look what I found or something. And then she caught herself, to your point, And her daughter's like, what? And she's like, oh, I just found your stuffy under the bed. Like, she's like, I took a breath and realized I had this big reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then I let myself regulate before I even addressed. She's like, I didn't even address the cookies in that moment because I was feeling dysregulated by finding them. So then I just like said something about her stuffy and I left until I could like calm down and
Wow.
regroup. I'm like,
So
yeah,
good.
exactly. It's
Okay.
so good, right? Because we're
Yeah.
creating that tension around food and our kids will feel it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I learned so much and I'm so grateful that you're here. And I hope all the moms who are listening who have been feeling any kind of anxiety or stress around your kids eating, you got some really practical things. Take some notes, like write some things down. And Nicole, what would be like your last words to moms right now who just love their kids so much and who are just so passionate about raising kids with healthy relationship with food and with their bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so a couple of things come to mind. One is to remember that not every single experience is going to make or break your child's relationship with food or what they eat. And it really is about creating an overall ecosystem where we have food neutrality, body neutrality. We're giving our kids permission. And so if you feel like, oh my gosh, one time I said the wrong thing or whatever it is, like don't put so much pressure on yourself to do it all right. It
Mm-hmm.
really is about having connection with food and enjoyment with food and relaxing a bit and just creating that overall environment. So if we can focus on like that bigger picture instead of all the little things that they're eating every single day. Another thing that I love, and Katya Rowell said this, she's like a feeding therapist and whatnot, and she wrote a book about helping kids with extreme picky eating. And she says nutrition is rarely an urgent issue. And I think that's so important to remember that we can kind of relax about that too. And if we can really guide them to having a more healthy and relaxed relationship with food, that they will be okay. I mean, so many of our foods are fortified, right? Like we can get iron and B vitamins from grains now. Like we don't see nutrient deficiencies often.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if your child is having some sort of consequences, they can't go to the bathroom well, or like there's issues, then okay, let's look for ways to support them with that. But nutrition is rarely an urgent issue. So if we can relax around that too, we're going to create a more joyful environment and less pressure filled environment. So I think those are the two main things. If we can just focus on that bigger picture and to give
Yeah.
ourselves a break too on having to do it all perfectly.
Oh, I even relaxed when you said that nutrition is not an urgent issue because you probably feel like there's like a ticking time bomb when you're going through that. So I'm sure that everyone kind of can relax a little bit and feel that relief. So Nicole, where can people find you if we've got some moms in here and they're like, I need to work with you? Where can they connect with you? I think, but I might be wrong. Do you have your own podcast?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
Then I'm completely wrong. Well, you should
Okay.
because you're a great speaker. But where can they find you?
Thank you. That might be in the making this year. That's my goal. So we'll hope for it.
Nice.
Trying to make some bandwidth for something else. But a great place to find me actually is on Instagram. I'm pretty active there. So if you just go to Nicole Cruz RD, that will also link you to anything else that you need. Like you can go to my website there. You can DM me directly. If you go to my Instagram, two things, and you DM me the word keys, just KEYS, you'll get my free guide, 5 Keys to Raise an Intuitive Eater. So that's a great thing. If you feel like you really actually might need some more support with this, DM me the word align and we'll set up a free call to just chat about what's going on with your family and see if the programs and support that I offer might be a good fit.
Ah, amazing. And yes, send her a DM. Let her know that you listened to her on this episode. Let her know what your biggest takeaways were. I love knowing that you are going to find her. So thank you so much, Nicole. This was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time chatting.
Hey, real quick before you go, if you're loving this podcast and you're thinking, Sabrina, I want more. I want to go deeper. I want a step-by-step process for healing my relationship with food. I've got a free workshop that literally walks you through it. It's a full breakdown of the exact method that I use to help my clients stop binging, heal emotional eating, and finally feel at peace with food and their bodies. It's totally free. So if you're ready to stop feeling obsessed and out of control with food, head to sabrinamagnan.com/training or find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.